Right. So my name is Andrew Koleros. I work with GRM International in the Research, Monitoring, and Evaluation practice area unit. What we do there basically is we help GRM on internal and external M&E, so setting up M&E systems for our programs and doing external impact evaluations of other people's programs as well. So I am an M&E guy, and I'm glad to see that there's some other M&E colleagues in the room. And as my colleagues at GRM are sick of hearing me say M&E is not the enemy, and I think that we're hearing a lot about the importance of M&E, so I'm really glad to hear a lot about that today. So about this presentation, Peter gave me 20 minutes to talk about results measurement and DIBs, and very gracious of him. So trying to think about how I would focus this, what I wanted to do is actually talk a little bit about my experience with theories of change and using theory-based evaluation and theory-based evaluation approaches in development programs, how they can be used to improve the design, implementation, and then evaluation of programs. And then possibly talk about some of the considerations that theory-based evaluation could bring to results measurement around DIBs and around aligning stakeholders and thinking about measurement in general. And it's actually probably going to bring up much more questions that are interesting for the people in this room to answer than me. And I've got a lot more questions after going through this day. I just wanted to say one of the interesting things that I've heard a lot about is talking about the evaluation of the model itself, the DIB model, and also some about the evaluation of the development outcomes as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about considerations around evaluation of the development outcomes, but I think there's a lot of room to talk about generating the body of evidence for this model of delivery as opposed to different types of models of delivery, and it seems like a lot of that has come out through this conference today. Right, so in thinking about theory-based evaluation, I'd just like to talk about how it might help us kind of get over some of this ex-ante risk evaluation problem. So we're talking about quantifying the likelihood of success or what we can achieve. And that really has three considerations that we're talking about. Uncertainties around that logic, understanding how activities lead to the outcomes and impact, the role of external influences, the context and how these programs are implemented, and then challenges around measurement and the certainty of measurement there. So we're really talking about the risk of uncertainty and how we're going to achieve these results. And there are some things that we've learned from theory-based evaluation or using theories of change that might help us think about how that approach could overcome some of these issues here. So moving from a single-based payment metric as a measure of accountability, theories of change might help us think through the life cycle of a program from design right on to the end and the different results and indicators and metrics that you might be looking across a whole causal chain. Also, it seems like a lot of the measurement is at the lower level of the results chain, and I know that this is a terminology issue, and M&E is somehow, I feel, that has become riddled with jargon around different terms, but I think that a well-articulated theory of change can help you just understand along a line of logic where it makes sense for you to think about measurement in general. Using a theories of change might also help us think beyond the limited scopes of the types of projects that DIBs might be suitable for. So clarifying incentives between the different stakeholders, and is this a suitable mechanism for some of the more complicated or systems kind of programs or development interventions. So just thinking a little bit about a theory-based evaluation approach, I think this is something that we're all quite used to, the classic sort of logical model where inputs translate to activities, translate to outputs, outcomes, and impact. And in theory-based evaluation, we'd be thinking about sort of the program theory and the impact theory, so understanding how the inputs translate into activities, how those translate into outputs of a program, so things that a program can deliver would be your program theory. And then we're thinking about the impact theory is how those outputs that a program delivers then translate to outcomes and long-term impacts. And by outcomes, I'm thinking about population changes or changes at a population level and then those long-term sustained changes at the impact level. And I think what's really important about theory-based evaluation or thinking about theories of change is the importance of context. So outside of that simple logic model, thinking about all of the contextual factors, the political economy, other development programs that are also influencing that program being delivered, and how that could impact on the successful delivery of your program, as well as the different stakeholders that would be involved. So using this simple model, if you want, if I can kind of talk a little bit about, in my opinion, why some programs fail to achieve the impact they think they're going to achieve from the beginning, we can talk about different types of failure. One is program implementation failure. So the program fails to implement it as it was designed. That could be it wasn't implemented correctly, it was implemented at low quality, it wasn't implemented at scale, lots of different implementers on the ground, different types of partners, they sort of change the model as they go. So it's not implemented the way that you desired, and it doesn't achieve those outputs. And if you can't get to those program outputs, you're not going to get to those impacts. Another way we see programs failing is a poor impact theory in itself. So a lack of an understanding about how that program's outputs could actually lead to the impact. So not thinking about the risk, not thinking about the assumptions, not thinking quite clearly about those causal logic, or not taking into account all of the different steps that need to get there. Linked to that also is a failure to take into account the context or those external influences, so the government, the other players, the other donors. That could be other programs that could be influencing your target population. That could be just other contextual issues in general, the economy, health, Ebola, all of these different things, and taking into account how the context of all of this impacts on how the program is delivered. And then you have some failures in measurement, so either not understanding what to measure or measuring the wrong things or not having the certainty that you need to measure all across the chain. And oftentimes programs fail as a combination of all of these things. It could be just a little bit of everything. And I think we've talked a little bit about the program implementation and the importance of performance management. I think that's really important. What I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about today is the impact theory failure. And some issues around measurement. So thinking maybe how theories of change or theory-based evaluation approaches could help align incentives around picking the right level of measurement and bringing confidence in the certainty that we have to have in the level of measurement, because that also has cost considerations. So thinking a little bit about impact theory, I'll start off just by talking about a theories of change, and I'm happy that it's already come up earlier. Somebody asked a question about theories of change, which is great. So for me, a theory of change really is a hypothesis. It's an understanding of how you think a program works, and it's a set of assumptions, but specifically, it's a set of assumptions under conditions. So the same assumptions might work in one country, they're not going to work in another country. We heard the example of an education program that worked delivering from NGOs but didn't work when it was delivered by the government. So what are all of those conditions under which you think that program can work? It articulates our understanding. And it's not saying how and why change happens, but our understanding of how and why change happens. And that can be two completely different things. And I think one of the most important things about a theory of change is that idea of making the explicit implicit. We all do this because we think it's going to work. We deliver programs because we think we can have an impact, and sometimes that's loaded in our heads, but getting people together, different stakeholders with different perspectives, and making them put pen to paper, making that implicit logic that we all think explicit is really helpful, and I think it actually keeps us honest. It's kind of an ego check sometimes about what we actually think our small program and our small funding and what we can do actually can achieve when you start to be honest about all of the different factors that influence the delivery of outcomes or impact. And I think also it can help us in understanding the reality of attribution versus contribution, and as you further get down that chain, how feasible, realistic, and appropriate is it to try to attribute a long-term change to your program. So for instance, my program was responsible for improving the quality of life of rural Kenyans. It's quite a lofty claim. There's so many things that impact quality of life, and thinking through what all of those different things are and how your program could contribute and I think it's an important exercise. So there's all kinds of different ways to look at this. The DFID audience will be quite comfortable with this sort of linear model of theory of change, where you see that program theory and the impact theory leading to that one outcome and then that one impact that you get over the long term. You can also think about more complex theories of change models as well. Some of them are really thinking a lot about feedback loops, how this outcome leads to that outcome, but if that changes, then it leads back to that, and then that leads back to that. Inclusion of contextual factors, so thinking about the population level changes not directly influenced by the program, population level changes influenced by other programs, and really who's really involved in this. I think the point is that there's no right way to do a theories of change. The importance is to articulate that causal logic yourself and how you understand that your program leads down the line, so how your activities lead down to that impact, and being honest about your assumptions and those risks all the way down the line, thinking about context as well. And if you can get all of the stakeholders around to agree on this really robust, comprehensive theory of change about how that program is going to lead to impact and everything that could throw you off along the way, it can also help you think and get some agreement around better alignment of incentives around stakeholders, and specifically what's an appropriate level of measurement based on the complexity of the program that you're trying to deliver. So this is sort of the classic DIBs stakeholder model that I've seen a few times, and thinking about the different stakeholders and what their incentives are specifically around the level of measurement for a program. The investors have high incentives for something that's low risk. They want to make sure that it works and they're going to get their money back. The implementing agents have high incentives for something that's within their sphere of influence, something that they have a high degree of control over, because if they can't control the outcomes and what's going to happen, then they're also at risk. Whereas the outcome funders are on the other side. They have a strong incentive for the most impactful changes. So as Phyllis was saying earlier, they don't want to say that they built a school. They want to say that girls are better educated, have lower rates of HIV, and all of this because of our program. So we all have different incentives that we're coming from around this. And I think that a theories of change could actually help to bring stakeholders together and align those incentives a bit and understand where's the right level of measurement. So just going back to this little simple theories of change model here that I was talking about, if you get that logic right, and I mean, I'm just using 5 boxes here, but as you can see, you can really think about breaking that out and expanding it. But if you get that right and you think about context all along the way, it can help you really understand who's accountable for what and what's a realistic level of attribution. And as the further you get down to that impact, really the lower ability you're going to have to attribute those results to your one program, and what's the right level to hit that. And it helps you also understand the external influences, and that you might be able to control external influences quite well, lower down in terms of how your resources are used and the activities that you do. But when you start to get up to building the school and then attendance rates and then improved education, you start to see all of the different external influences that are going to start contributing to those further down the logic chain. And you have to really understand how important those are in your ability to achieve that and what you actually would be able to attribute to that one program. So we can find the right space for the measurement level. So the DIBs measurement level, it could be found to be right here. You're going to have your investors and your implementers are going to want to push that as far down as they can because that's more accountable to them. They have more control over that. You're going to want to see your outcome funders pushing it further there as well. But if you have a well-articulated theory of change and you understand that logic and everybody agrees on that logic, you might find yourself in a position where it's okay to hit the measurement level at the output level because the outcome funders can feel confident that that theory holds. And if you can hit your output targets, it's actually going to lead to those outcomes and the impacts that you're looking for. And there's less of a requirement to look at those different levels of measurement, but you might be able to hit it at something and say, well, if I can show that attendance rates went up by this, the theory shows that that will lead to improved education and other improved outcomes and those long-term impacts. And that might be enough to sort of start to build the confidence there. And I think the last thing to take into account is the time horizon to achieve impact here. But just translating a little bit these theory-based evaluation approaches to DIBs, I think that a well-articulated theories of change can help to align incentives a little bit around the different players. The overall impact theory, if that's well accepted by everybody, can help guide the decisions about what level of attribution you actually need to achieve. It also can help you think about, along that causal chain, what are all the different indicators before you hit that payment metric indicator that's going to, for the accountability level, but what are all of the other indicators and metrics that you might want to look at across that whole chain that will help you ensure that it's being delivered right, that it's being delivered at scale, and that when you actually get to the payment metric, you're going to achieve that. It also helps you understand the importance of context, and I think that's an important thing that you can have that conversation with an outcome funder or other donor about how the external influences are really going to impact that program and what you can really be on the line for as a program, and being honest about that. But I think more importantly, theories of change it's a living thing. So it continues to be refined, it's tested, it's validated, it's improved. And using that as a convening mechanism to bring people together to look at the evidence that we're collecting, the data we're collecting, looking at those assumptions, looking at those risks, testing them, updating that. I think it can keep everybody on the same page to watch the progression of the implementation of this program and ensure that everybody understands what the impact of that program can achieve. So, a few questions that have come up to me before this and are, coming up more and more. Using this DIB model, is it a suitable financing mechanism for just simple interventions where that causal logic and causal chain is quite well established? Or could agreement on an overall theories of change help bring stakeholders together? So an investor and outcome funder's appetite for more complicated or complex programs. Could you use a DIB for a governance program that's looking at increased safety and security in the DRC? If you understand lower down on that results chain that improved responsiveness of the police, for instance, is a key critical factor to increasing safety and security. Something that's a bit more measurable, something that a program could actually deliver, but the outcome funder could also see that, yes, well, we are hitting that outcome that we're looking for as well. And it can also help us balance the time horizons, understand what's realistic in a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, or 15-year program. So, in the example I just gave, police reform in the Congo, it's not a 3-year project. That's a long-term commitment that you're making. So that's a little bit about sort of getting the level of measurement right. And I just wanted to spend the last couple of minutes talking about impact measurement itself. And as a data guy, as an M&E guy myself, I love data. I love to collect data. I'm very curious. I want to always collect more data. But I think it's important to keep ourselves answering a few questions that help us understand what do we actually need to be collecting. So in terms of measurement, is it good to know? Do we actually need to know it, or would it be just nice to know it? And I think that is important, especially around this DIBs measurement, because it's expensive to do a lot of this independent evaluation work that's being done. And our colleagues from DFID are funding a lot of impact evaluations, and it is quite costly. So thinking about the levels of evidence, just along the line, the level of evidence that you collect has an impact on the certainty you can have around the results that you collect. The certainty you have on those results affects how you interpret those results, what they say, and then the degree to which they can be used as evidence for policy and programs. And of course, the stronger level of evidence required, the stronger level of evidence you collect requires increased rigor, designs, data collection costs, etc. So how certain do you want to be about that arrow? And how much are you willing to pay to be certain about that arrow? So we talk about different levels of evidence. 3 levels of evidence are often talked about, especially in the public health sphere. We have level of adequacy, plausibility, and probability. And I'll just take you through a few of the questions at these different levels and some considerations around measurement at all 3. So when you're looking at adequacy, level, an evaluation question might be, did the outcomes change as expected? So did you see that trend, that observable outcome change? Was the program implemented as planned? So there's no clear linking program implementation. There's no clear line of causality. You can't say that the program caused that change, but you can see that the program worked, and so did and your outcomes changed as you wanted to. And these are quite easy or less costly ways to do measurement at this level. So different types of studies, cross-sectional surveys that actually often exist in these types of countries and developing world, and then just good performance management and program monitoring data. A second level is at the plausibility level. Here you're asking questions around, did the program seem to have an effect above and beyond other external influences? Is it likely that the changes in outcomes are attributable to the program? And did the program contribute to those observed changes? So here you might see some quasi-experimental design, some difference in difference or propensity score matches, some of the other approaches that have been referred to today, and then just a descriptive triangulation of trends, so bringing it all together, bringing together your program data and this other data that you've been collecting is specifically around the contextual data. So have I been looking at changes in GDP? Have I been looking at changes in health? Have I been looking at changes in education rates? Do I see that my program was delivered how I want? Do I see that the outcomes are changing? Is it reasonable to say that this program led to the change that we're looking for? And then the last level is probability, and it seems that so some of the examples that have been given today that a lot of the results measurement to date has been at that probabilistic level. So looking at, for the randomistas in the room, a randomized control trial or other experimental designs that are going to actually give you that high degree of proof, a high degree of evidence that the change in outcomes is attributable to that program. So thinking about theory-based evaluation approaches, most theory-based evaluations would look at a plausibility level of evidence as a suitable level. And when we're thinking about plausibility, we're trying to convince a reasonable and skeptical outside observer that that change is attributable to that program. And a good example I can give is that oftentimes when I talk about this, it's taking a program and taking the evidence and putting it on trial. Sometimes you have DNA evidence, and sometimes you have the smoking gun, but not in every case, and people get convicted all the time. So we're putting out the evidence to a jury of our peers, and we're trying to put together a body of evidence. And I was happy to hear Michael talk about Exhibit A and Exhibit B, because that's exactly it. It's bringing different types of evidence. Evidence around the contextual nature, evidence around the program that's being developed, being delivered at scale, evidence of outcomes changing, all of this together. And can you convince somebody that it's reasonable to accept that this is the program that led to this change? And is that an acceptable level of evidence? So recognizing the complexity of interventions, that a program can just contribute and not only have to be attributable to all those changes, and taking into account the context. So some of the questions around DIBs that raised for me, and I think we've kind of touched around them a lot, but I'd be interested to hear some of the audience members comment on these, is what level of measurement do we need? So is the RCT and a randomized control trial what we need to trigger payment, or is there appetite to think about more of a plausibility design or otherwise, if there's a well-articulated and accepted theories of change around that program? And then ultimately, who decides, who makes the call about what that level of evidence? Is it the investor? Is it the outcome payer? Who takes part in those conversations? And for me, for the DIBs that are live and the people that are working on them, who's paying for this right now? I'm quite interested to know who's paying for these expensive randomized control trials and this really costly measurement. Who recruits these people? Who are they? Who manages them? Just even in terms of the independent verification agent, that term is quite kind of old school, sort of why the M&E can be perceived as the enemy, that policing audit kind of function, whereas in general, I think for a lot of development practitioners, we've seen M&E move into a different space where we're talking about proving versus improving. Proving is that accountability, so did the program say what it said it would do? Improving more about the lessons learning and what can we really learn from that program. So is the role of measurement simply around that accountability mechanism and proving that something happened, or is there a role for program learning as well? So does that independent verification agent, are they trying to understand why, how, and under what conditions that program worked? Because those questions are just as important if you want to take this out to the next bring this to scale or replicate it in another area? So these are just some of the questions that I have. Thanks for your attention, and any questions from, but more important for the audience, because you're really the experts around this, and I'd love to engage with you guys more on this subject. Thanks.
That will teach me for only giving you 20 minutes.
I go much longer.
That's great. Any questions for Drew or indeed to other M&E practitioners?
Hi, I'm Alison Griffith from Practical Action. Thank you for that presentation. I was the person who asked about theory of change earlier, so it was great to hear you talk about it so much. I guess the thing that I picked up on from your presentation was your statement that it's helpful or important to get stakeholders to agree on the theory of change. And I want to challenge us to really take on board that these are development impacts that we're after. So a key stakeholder group in that is the most marginalised, given that everything that we do in development is going to have to address the forthcoming Sustainable Development Goals, and absolutely top of the agenda there is leave no one behind. So with that kind of background and this challenge for theories of change, I think it really challenges us. Whose theory of change is it? And those of us who are involved in programming, you know, we get very excited about this vision of change for that program and understanding the context, etc., etc. But once you start to really get to grips with whose vision of change is it, and really involving stakeholders, not just in commenting on that theory of change and that vision for future change, but being really involved in leading it, in driving it, and including the most marginalised and excluded in that process, then that sort of statement that you made about getting stakeholders involved in the theory of change process actually becomes really central and critical to what we're doing. So I'd be interested in hearing from you and others about experience of getting all stakeholders, but particularly the most marginalised, involved. And we heard from Susan earlier, who said that, you know, South Africa has nice policies, but implementation has not really lived up to it. And we need to be careful that we don't have nice theories of change, that you know, we're delivering on some things, but not where it really matters. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just comment on that. Thanks. It's a great comment, and we've had a lot of interesting experiences with that. You know, just one is doing a retrospective evaluation for DIFID Nepal and putting together a retrospective theory of change for a program that they did. And they had all of these ideas around what they had done that would be the most impactful for people. And when we did some field work and some ethnographic research with the beneficiary populations, things came out like remittances in Nepal were probably the most impactful change for people in the last 20 years. And not one development agency over that spectrum had even given a thought to remittances. So we had all completely missed the boat, and that wouldn't have even showed up in our analysis if we hadn't got down to that level. So as a result, when we've been doing these theories of change moving forward for evaluations, we've always found that this, the beneficiary groups or the stakeholder groups that are involved, the poor and the most poor and marginalized, are a key informant to helping us understand that theory, because they know things that we just take for granted.
Thank you. I'm Joanna from the International HIV/AIDS Alliance. Just to respond to your point, and I say this, and I by no means would claim that the Alliance has it right yet, but we've been working with theories of change over the past couple of years, and just to confirm what you were suggesting, we've tried to develop a model where we really develop the theory of change at grassroots, or if it's developed at a program design level, that we have a cascade of community consultation and verification that takes place. And a lot of our work is with the most marginalised, with people who use drugs, with sex workers, with the LGBTI community, because in so many countries the HIV epidemic is very concentrated amongst those groups. So It's something that we're trying to do, and that, yes, I would encourage others to do. But on the other end of the spectrum, for those of you who work with DFID, I know that DFID often have their own theories of change in various areas, whether it's in SRHR or in governance. So in terms of buy-in from coming from both directions, it's a challenge to get that, but it's also important. And I was really interested to hear your point about where there's buy-in from the outcome funder, that if you deliver certain outputs, then they can assume that certain outcomes will be achieved. You know, a question to DFID, that if we're working off your theory of change, under a payment by results contract, are you happy for us to deliver outputs, since it's your theory of change that claims that that will achieve certain outcomes? So I know it's an ongoing conversation, but...
And I think that logic holds for, you know, in a lot of health programs. So I am sick, you take the pill, my output is that I gave you the pill, and we all agree that that logic down will lead to reduced morbidity, reduced mortality, or whatever it is. But so when you start getting into programs like governance or HIV prevention, when that causal logic further down the chain gets quite complicated, and you start to see all of the other external factors, and that's when testing and revising that theories of change becomes so important.
Marcus Forte from Zurich Insurance Company in the investment management department. We've been working on a DIB for about the last 9 months, and I think the first thing I would say is you're not the enemy of anyone, you're actually their greatest friend. And the reason I say that is, from an investor, the more that we can understand in advance, so ex ante of the situation, the cheaper it will be for everyone. The more that we don't know, the more expensive it will be, and probably the least lower likelihood of actually being able to consummate a transaction. What that means is that both from the donor and the implementer, the more that we can help him and his team get the information collected so that we can understand what the likelihood of the impact would be, and then what we, the investor, would be paid for, the better everybody's situation would be. Skipping over all of the other points about actually the value creation of having an investor involved. Assuming that's true, the more that the information can be there, the better off that actually it's not coming to me, the investor, to cover my risk, but actually delivering impact. To me, that's a major prerequisite to success.
So who is paying for the results measurement on the DIB you're working on?
We haven't even gotten that far because we can't get to the point of actually being able to assess what is the value from all of the 3 different parties. We, from our side, say, effectively, it's a prerequisite. I don't care what level. It could be at the output level, it could be at the outcome level. I need to be able to know ex ante what it is, because you, the donor, feel that's valuable, and that there's the information available to me to actually assess that, and then on an ongoing basis, right? It's not like I'm going to give you $100 million or even $10 day one and then go away and expect, 5 years later I'm going to get it back. I'm going to want it on a regular basis, consistently. I think that part also might be somewhat of a misunderstanding between donors, NGOs, or implementers and investors. It's not that the donor, by not being directly involved with the NGO anymore, is the NGO is no longer going to have somebody looking over their shoulder. The investor certainly will, maybe in a different way, but we're still going to be thinking, what is the level of measurement, or what is that metric that I need to reach, or the NGO needs to reach on my behalf, so that I get paid back? Right? That's never going to go away. And so these types of trade-offs will, again, always come back to you. So who's paying for that? Ultimately, it's going to come out of the risk-adjusted return, which is ultimately then one step back going to the donor. So the more sort of risk that's out there, the more the donor is going to have to pay, which is ultimately going to go into, to me, the investor, what I'm going to have to give up. So you said, who's paying? Always in the end, the donor. I mean, we don't pay for anything. Right. We finance. Right.
Thank you. Just to respond on... Oh, it is working, sorry. To respond on behalf of DFID to your question, which, as I understand it, was around when we're using our theories of change, does that mean we're happy to pay at places lower down on the results chain than outcomes? The answer is absolutely yes. If you look at our payment by results strategy, which includes development impact bonds and results-based financing, and also results-based aid, which is the term we use for something like RBF, but with partner governments, that the strategy that was published back in June, we absolutely consider payment by results at the output level as well as the outcome level. It's very much a matter of looking at individual projects and seeing what's suitable for each circumstance. We do find that some of our suppliers actually prefer to receive payments at the outcome level because that gives them more flexibility on how they achieve results, and so they can make savings there. But other times it is much more suitable to pay at the output level. So I think that's a yes, basically. Does that answer your question, or did I miss something?
Hi, Elise Brown from GRM International. I had a question specifically about partners in the room that are actually working on DIBs programs, about how systemic change around monitoring and results are being impacted. So for example, there's a lot of discussion about one of the attractive components to DIBs is a more rigorous M&E evaluative process. And that is very attractive in these circles and in development fora, but in reality, in terms of being operationalized at the local level for service providers, that can be extremely intimidating. And so when we're thinking about long-term strategy, what has been best practices or lessons learned about actually making it feasible for service providers to deliver on rigorous M&E or quality M&E for program delivery into the long term as it relates to capacity building, as it relates to strengthening kind of their programs. What is the thinking about that? Essentially, yeah.
Did anybody put their hand up to respond, or should we table that one? I mean, Elise, thank you. It's a really important question. I think perhaps it might be one for a smaller conversation group. So unless there are anybody in the room who would immediately like to respond, I might suggest that perhaps tea and coffee and a short break are in order, and then we can come back and convene for the final session.